The number one mistake in analyzing the modern space race is focusing on rocket technology. The real concern, highlighted in recent congressional testimony, is a crisis of national industrial capacity and political will. The hearing called "There's a Bad Moon on the Rise" was less about China's capabilities and more about a growing fear that the US can no longer execute large-scale, decade-long projects with unified focus. While China consistently meets its ambitious timelines, NASA's Artemis program has become a case study in delays. This is not a challenge that can be solved with a bigger budget. It is a systemic problem, and it is forcing a difficult conversation about whether the US still has the institutional capacity to lead. The data presented to Congress is definitive. The Apollo program established the template, space as an extension of superpower competition. After 1972, however, the US shifted focus from systematic exploration to the Space Shuttle program and to international space station partnerships. The assumption that American technological superiority was permanent and unchallenged permeated strategic thinking for decades. China's space program began in earnest in 2003 with Yang Liwei's orbital flight, 38 years after the first American spacewalk. Rather than attempting to replicate Apollo's all-at-once approach, China adopted a methodical, incremental strategy: master crew operations, develop autonomous docking, establish permanent stations, then target the moon with systematic precision. By 2019, something fundamental had shifted in the global space landscape. China's Chang'e 4 mission achieved the first soft landing on the lunar far side, a capability the United States had never developed. This was not mere technological catch-up. It was technological leapfrogging. The Senate hearing represents official recognition that the catch-up phase is complete, and China is now setting new operational standards in multiple domains of space exploration. This shift coincided with China's broader geopolitical emergence. Unlike the Soviet Union, which prioritized space achievements at the expense of other sectors, China's space program advances alongside economic development, military modernization, and global infrastructure initiatives. The result is a space program that draws strength from a comprehensive national strategy, rather than competing against other priorities. China's space development follows a three-phase 30-year plan executed with systematic progression. Phase 1 focused on achieving crew capability and orbital operations. Phase 2 established permanent space stations and lunar sample return capabilities. Phase 3, currently underway, targets crew lunar missions and Mars sample return by 2030. This contrasts sharply with NASA's approach, which operates under 4-year political cycles, with program cancellations, budget fluctuations, and shifting priorities. The Constellation program was canceled in 2010 after billions in development. The Space Launch System experienced years of delays and cost overruns. Artemis timelines have been repeatedly revised, with initial targets of 2024 now pushed to 2027 or beyond. China's advantage is not technological superiority, it is operational consistency. While NASA designs superior individual systems, China executes complete mission architectures on schedule. The Chinese space program resembles a corporate development roadmap more than a political initiative, with systematic milestone achievements regardless of leadership changes or global events. The testimony presented to Congress highlighted specific examples of this consistency. China announced plans for a space station in 2011 and launched its core module in 2021. The United States announced Gateway Lunar Station plans in 2017, with first components now scheduled for 2026 at the earliest. Chinese lunar sample return missions were announced in 2016 and completed in 2020. NASA's equivalent Viper mission was announced in 2019 and has been delayed multiple times. This systematic approach extends to workforce development as well. China graduates more STEM professionals annually than the United States, and it maintains continuity in project teams across mission phases. NASA, by contrast, has struggled with knowledge transfer between programs, as retirements and program cancellations disrupt institutional memory. The September 2025 Senate hearing revealed a level of institutional concern unprecedented since the Sputnik crisis of 1957. Former NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine testified that the United States faces a space Pearl Harbor if China establishes operational lunar superiority before Artemis 3 can establish an American presence. The testimony was notable not for political rhetoric, but for technical specificity. Witnesses presented detailed timelines showing China's systematic progression toward a permanent lunar presence, while Artemis faces continued delays. The emotional register was one of professional alarm, with career space officials publicly acknowledging that American space leadership is no longer guaranteed. Committee members from both parties expressed frustration that China's achievements consistently exceed U.S. intelligence predictions, suggesting a systematic underestimation of Chinese operational capacity. Senator Maria Cantwell noted that every single prediction about China's space capabilities has been too conservative by at least 2 years, and she questioned whether current assessments of China's lunar timeline are similarly underestimated. NASA officials described an institutional struggle to maintain program continuity across administrations. Current Administrator Bill Nelson testified that the greatest challenge is not technical capability, it is institutional continuity. He highlighted that China's space program has maintained consistent leadership and strategic direction, while NASA has navigated multiple reorganizations and priority shifts. The hearing also revealed growing concerns about industrial capacity. Multiple witnesses testified that the United States Aerospace Industrial Base has contracted significantly since Apollo, with specialized manufacturing capabilities either outsourced or lost entirely. China, meanwhile, has systematically developed domestic production for everything from advanced alloys to radiation-hardened electronics. The competitive environment now spans low Earth orbit, lunar operations, and deep space missions simultaneously. China's Tiangong station operates with rotating 3-person crews conducting systematic research. The Chang'e 6 mission returned far-side lunar samples in 2024. Tianwen-1 continues operations on Mars, while Tianwen-3 prepares for a sample return mission. This represents sustained, multi-domain operational capacity that the United States has not maintained since Apollo. NASA relies on SpaceX for crew transport, international partnerships for station operations, and delayed programs for lunar access. The operational asymmetry is stark. China maintains independent, systematic capability across all major space domains. Working conditions within NASA reflect this pressure. Project timelines face constant political scrutiny, budget uncertainty affects long-term planning, and technical teams operate under the knowledge that schedule slips provide competitive advantage to China. Congressional testimony from agency engineers described a crisis of confidence in program continuity that affects recruitment and retention of specialized talent. The hearing highlighted specific operational concerns about lunar resource development. China's Chang'e missions have systematically mapped potential water ice deposits at the lunar South Pole, the same region targeted by NASA's Artemis program. Witnesses testified that China appears positioned to establish physical presence in prime locations before NASA's hardware arrives, potentially setting precedents for resource utilization rights. Industry representatives testified about divergent program management approaches. While NASA programs require multiple contractors, extensive oversight, and complex certification processes, China's space program operates with streamlined decision-making and vertical integration. The result is dramatically different development timelines for comparable systems. Former astronaut Garrett Reisman testified, "The issue isn't that we can't build these systems. It's that we've created institutional processes that make it nearly impossible to build them quickly or affordably." He cited examples where similar space hardware took 3 times longer to develop in the US system compared to China's approach. The congressional hearing identified specific timelines of concern. China plans crewed lunar missions by 2030, permanent lunar bases by 2035, and Mars crew missions by 2040. NASA's Artemis program targets a crew lunar landing by 2027, but this depends on multiple untested systems operating flawlessly in sequence. The strategic concern is not just timeline competition, but operational precedent. Whichever nation establishes permanent lunar operations first will effectively write the framework for off-world resource utilization, territorial claims, and international space law. The hearing expressed alarm that China's systematic approach to international space partnerships, particularly through the International Lunar Research Station Initiative, is positioning it to establish these precedents. China's space program operates as an extension of Belt and Road Initiative logic. Establish infrastructure, create operational dependencies, then set the terms for access. Applied to space, This means Chinese lunar bases, orbital facilities, and deep space logistics, creating the framework that other nations must operate within. The US response requires sustained commitment across multiple political cycles, something the hearing acknowledged as historically difficult for American space programs. Witnesses proposed various institutional reforms, including establishing a Space Development Authority with multi-decade funding authorization, similar to how the Tennessee Valley Authority maintained continuity through multiple administrations. The hearing identified critical lessons from China's systematic approach: unified command structure, consistent long-term funding, and integration between military and civilian space capabilities. NASA's traditional strength, technological innovation through competitive procurement, may be insufficient against China's model of systematic, state-directed execution. Future American space strategy must balance innovation with operational consistency, requiring institutional changes that extend beyond technical capability to fundamental program management philosophy. Several witnesses advocated for a portfolio approach where certain core capabilities receive guaranteed long-term funding regardless of administration changes. Space Envision's analysis presented at the hearing highlighted that China's lunar ambitions align with broader strategic interests in resource security and technological leadership. The lunar South Pole's potential water ice resources represent not just scientific interest, but strategic capability, propellant production, enabling sustained deep space operations. The journey from Apollo's scientific triumph to today's strategic competition represents a fundamental change in space operations. What began as exploration has become expansion, and expansion requires sustained operational capability rather than individual technological demonstrations. China transformed from latecomer to strategic competitor through systematic execution of long-term planning, while the US space program operated under political and budget inconsistencies. NASA's concern is not technological inadequacy, it's operational sustainability. The evidence presented to Congress confirms that China's methodical approach has produced consistent results, while American programs struggle with continuity. The Bad Moon on the Rise hearing was not about space exploration. It was about recognizing that the next phase of human expansion beyond Earth will be determined by whichever nation can sustain systematic, multi-decade operational programs. The competition is no longer about reaching space. It is about controlling the infrastructure that defines how humanity operates there. The testimony before Congress was not just about technological competition. It was about institutional capacity. The fundamental question is not whether American technology can compete, but whether American institutions can sustain the focus required for multi-decade space development. The answer to that question will determine whether NASA's concerns about China's rise represent a temporary challenge or a permanent shift in space leadership. The data is clear. This is not a technological race, but an institutional one. Institutions that cannot maintain continuity of purpose cannot lead humanity's expansion into space, regardless of their budgets or technological capabilities.